From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is an OU update. I'm Jenny Carlson. Lincoln Riley hired Alex Grinch to coach his defense. Now Alex Grinch making some hires to fill out his defensive staff, and Ryan Aber joins us on the telephone to talk through the latest. Ryan, we know that Brian Odom, a former Sooner player, coming back to be on the defensive staff. Tell us what you know at this point about what he'll be doing for Alex Grinch's defensive coaching staff.
Well, he hasn't quite been hired officially, but it looks like they're just going through the final steps of working out his contract. But Brian Odom is going to be coaching the linebackers with Oklahoma. He's not a guy who's been coaching for a long, long time, even though his playing career ended in the early 2000s. He's mainly been a strength and conditioning guy, but he was a quality control coach on Alex Grinch's Washington State staff, his first two there, before moving on to Missouri as the outside linebackers coach. And it looks like he'll be taking on a similar role for the Sooners. Still not clear if he's going to have all the linebackers or just one group of them.
Yeah, and at this point, we know that Alex Grinch has at least one other spot he has to fill after it was announced Kerry Cook's leaving to join the Texas Tech staff. And I guess it's possible that there could be another spot with two coaches, at least over the last couple years, coaching defensive line in Calvin Thibodeau and Ruffin McNeil. Are we hearing any scuttlebutt about what's going to happen with those spots and or that open spot in the secondary, Ryan?
Yeah, there's still some questions over whether Ruffin McNeil will return and if he'll return in a coaching role. It looks like Calvin Thibodeau is going to be back. He's been hitting the road hard in recruiting, and all the talk throughout this whole process has been he was the one coach that I think everybody felt like was safe. Still questions over Bob Diaco, whether he'll return for the Sooners. But as far as the secondary, it looks like Alex Grinch is going to coach at least part of the secondary. I would anticipate that he'll coach the safeties and that they'll hire a cornerbacks coach on the other side. There'd been some talk about Manning from UCLA being one of those options, which is interesting because he was a linebackers coach and he was rumored to be the pick at linebackers coach after Oklahoma moved on from Brian Odom. Well, they came back to Brian Odom after initially being turned down, and it appears like that's going to work out. So still a lot of movement here, just 3 weeks before the spring signing day.
Hey, Ryan, lastly, back to Brian Odom for just 1 second. You know, I mentioned he is a former Sooner. He was around in the early 2000s when Oklahoma won that championship, really started the Bob Stoops excellence, that era under Bob Stoops. In your mind, I mean, there's a lot that needs to change on this Oklahoma defense, but having a guy that was a Sooner in those days, is there any benefit in that from where you're sitting?
Oh, yeah, I think there's no doubt about it, especially when you look at what those defenses were at that point and what that's what they want to get back to is that hard-nosed, physical type of defense. That's the kind of defense he's coached at Washington State and Missouri. So I think there's definitely value in that. You know, sort of related to that, a funny story that I heard yesterday when researching Brian Odom a little bit is that Brian Odom was recruited by Mike Leach, who, of course, he wound up coaching under at Washington State. Brian Odom was not on the 1999 team that Mike Leach played on by the time he got there. Mike Leach had moved on to be the head coach at Texas Tech. But Mike Leach was convinced that Brian Odom was on the 1999 team and always used to say, "Hey, Brian, remember when ... And Brian Odom just sat there and sort of shook his head. He wasn't about to argue with Mike Leach.
Well, Brian Odom back in Norman, or at least that's the expectation. He'll have a chance to create some new memories that Mike Leach won't be a part of, but we'll see how that goes. Again, Alex Grinch still having remaining spots. We'll continue to follow that news as he fills those positions, and as Ryan said, signing day on the horizon. We'll see what that all means for the Sooners. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.